Hey, this is Cedric Youngelman, your host of the Bitcoin Matrix podcast. Before we get into this fun rip where I get interviewed by fellow Bitcoin podcaster and my brother from another mother, Daniel Prince, on his Once Bitten podcast, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, River. Why do I recommend River? Because I personally use the service and they offer zero fees on recurring Bitcoin purchases. You can dollar cost average hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. Every Bitcoin is stored in a one-to-one multi-sig cold storage, meaning your assets are always accessible. Plus, with US-based phone support, help is just a call away. They also have this cool feature called Riverlink, which allows you to send Bitcoin via text to anyone, which can be claimed to any wallet. River makes it simple and secure to save your wealth in Bitcoin. Get up to $100 when you sign up and buy Bitcoin on partner.river.com/matrix. This podcast, from recording to editing to marketing, is 100% self-ran by yours truly. All boosts on the Fountain app go directly toward making future episodes as awesome as possible for you all. Value for value style. And now, let's enter the Bitcoin Matrix.
What is real? How do you define real?
You can't jump into cash. Cash is trash. What do? You get out.
Cedric, how you doing, mate? Long time coming.
I'm doing great. Very excited and honored to be here, Daniel. And Lauren, nice to meet you guys. Lauren via Zoom.
Lauren,
nice to meet you too.
So go ahead. What's your question?
How did you find Bitcoin?
I think Bitcoin kind of found me. I was on Twitter, probably hanging out on FinTwit, and Bitcoiners just kept coming into my feed, and they were sort of obnoxious the way they would kind of talk in sort of absolutisms about Bitcoin, and maybe a little toxic, if you will. And that kind of made me want to sort of challenge their ideas and put it in their face that they were wrong. And the more I looked at these ideas, the more I was really intrigued about Bitcoin. And, I'll say it, I came for the gains, honestly, at first, the way they talked about it and what I could do with it. And it was one of the first things I ever really speculated on in my life. So that's kind of how I found Bitcoin.
Financial Twitter. So were you just following like stock markets and things like that, just out of like personal interest? Or
I think I was just hanging out on Twitter, trying to understand Twitter. I came from Facebook in 2016, trying to understand the world, and Facebook was just not really a great venue for knowledge or signal. So I headed over to Twitter, and I was really confused by Twitter and what to get from it, how to interact on it, how to have a voice on it. So I think just political stuff came into my feed, and maybe I think financial stuff. I don't know what financial Twitter I was following, maybe some macro accounts, or just kind of fumbling around. But Bitcoiners just kept kind of coming in, cyber hornets, and maybe this was in 2017 or late 2017 when Bitcoin was just booming. And it just was something where it was like, wow, this is anything like they're saying it is. Maybe I should take a stab at this. This sounds like really a once in a lifetime opportunity.
So, and here's like the thing, because we spend all of the time telling our kids, don't talk to strangers on the internet. Don't spend too many hours a day scrolling through and yada, yada, yada. I actually had the honor of introducing Jack Dorsey onto a panel in Madeira for the conference there. And I just wanted to give a heads up, like, Jack, I don't know how many people are, directly, you are directly responsible for having them learn about Bitcoin, because I was one of them. If it was not for Bitcoin Twitter, I might have got there in the end, but my goodness, these guys, they would beat you up around the head. Like, it's like being the new kid in the playground. And it's like, I remember like, whoa, these guys are crazy. I'll just sit back and watch for a few months and see what happens and take it in. But the level of education that we've all managed to glean from it. And I think they were special days, like between 17 and Well, even today, newbies coming in, it's still probably one of the best places to go and get diluted signal.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the best place to get some signal, specifically around Bitcoin. But I do think it's got a double-edged sword there, and I don't think I'd want my children or a lot of my family members on Twitter. I think that is a can be a dangerous place. I think a lot of ideas are coming your way, and you have to think critically about them. What I loved about Bitcoin is that it's a ledger. I'm an accountant by trade. I still do my fiat accounting, corporate accounting consulting job, and I love that I could run the numbers on it and find truth. But you could find a lot of non-truths on Twitter that can be compelling, or you might want to look at. So I wonder how Jack Dorsey thinks about a lot of those issues. I wouldn't want my kids on Twitter or a lot of those platforms right now. And I have kids your age, Lauren, and it's tough. I don't know, but I do think that it's opportunity for critical thinkers who are interested in truth to grab on to the bull by the horns, because it's like a library. It's a giant, never-ending library, and there's all different kinds of content, whether you like audio or video or written, long form or short form. You want to be in a dialogue, a debate, or someone's investigative reporting. So the opportunities are boundless for information, and so.
Any further questions?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank
You're
you
saving
so
them all
much.
for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It was so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Right. So, wow, it was a couple of years ago I was on your podcast. It's gone so fast.
Yeah, it's like been like an eon, but that you were one of the earliest guests to come on, and it was like episode 24. And it was such a, so fantastic to have you on. And you've been a big part of my journey, specifically, even not just your podcast, but your book, and kind of opening up and exploring and expanding that avenue, how to raise kids and homeschooling and world traveling. And I think that really segues and parallels nicely with Bitcoin in so many different facets.
It truly does. And most of the younger Bitcoiners that I meet at the conferences, they come up and that's what they don't want to talk about Bitcoin. They want to talk about homeschooling, unschooling, world schooling. And again, in Madeira, there was a couple of panels, one hosted by Lauren, actually, in the kids block, which was, it had me and a couple of other parents up there answering questions about, they were unschooling mums. Why not the education system? And then we had another one on the open source stage as well. And that was packed out. People are very interested. If you've separated money from state, you will separate education from state at some stage, or that will be a very big question hanging over like your family choices. So it's really nice to see these conversations happening, because it's my belief that we're all trying to starve the beast here, and we can't keep feeding it our kids' hearts, minds, and souls from the age of 3, 4, or 5. Like that we will never get over the line, because they'll just be indoctrinated, and it doesn't matter what you tell them at the dinner table. They'll never be able to critically think, and we'll just become fiat debt slaves, like we ended up walking into.
Yeah, I think that's still a possibility for wide swaths of society, and I think it's. I don't think a lot of people even realize what has happened to education. I mean, even on my own, my parents were lifelong New York City public school teachers. I was, public education was a cornerstone of society in my household. And I've had to sort of re-examine all those things. And just thinking about how money interacts with education, like you were getting at, and propaganda. And I think just with food, you've had Texas Slim on the show, and what we've seen there. I mean, these things are just getting exponentially worse as the money gets exponentially worse, and we go up that S curve on how just debasing our money in our society.
I wondered, did your parents ever come across John Taylor Gatto's work?
That doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, he was a New York public school teacher for 30 years, I think. And he won a couple of awards when he was actually in the system. But he wrote the underground history to the American education system, and it's a tome. Like this thing is huge, right? But he lays it all out there, and it's just interesting that he was one of the one of the people that came from the inside stepped back, took a look at it, and critical eye at it, and then went deep down the rabbit hole of research. And it was through his work, that book in particular, that I learned about the General Education Board and how that come to be. I've told it on a few podcasts recently, but it's a direct tie-in with what they did in Jekyll Island, right? In 1910, they had the secret meeting, 6 or 7 people, and they all gathered off in secret to figure out how to capture the monetary system. In 1902, they'd already pulled off this with the education system. They had a secret meeting, and they all got together and they figured out, how do we capture and mold the education system to what we want it or need it to be for our best interests? And of course, hosting that meeting was none other than John Rockefeller. And the first guy to fund it was John D. Rockefeller of $1 million under the guise of philanthropy. Obviously, we need to educate everybody, but we all know what's really going on. So yeah, it's like, goddamn. Like, when you learn about Jekyll Island, you were angry as all hell. And then when you learn about the General Education Board, you will be angry as all hell. It's like we have to just step away and build parallel structures. And that's what Bitcoin is doing and allowing us to do in other areas of our lives. So I would say if you can get your hands on that book, get one. It'd be interesting, certainly, to put in front of your parents.
Yeah, no, I like putting that stuff in front of them. My father's not around anymore, but it's fun to challenge them, and I think they get it. I mean, they were kind of foot soldiers to feed the family in a lot of ways, but they're willing to entertain these conversations for sure. They taught in some of the worst neighborhoods, so it went way beyond education. I mean, it was shelter, it was food and nutrition in a lot of ways, and those schools were open a lot more than mine. So I would go in with them whenever we had holidays or days off or snow days they didn't get. So
what areas are we talking?
Oh yeah, so my dad, he taught in Brownsville, Brooklyn, on the border of Brownsville and East New York. So way out in Brooklyn. And my mom, Far Rockaway, Queens. These neighborhoods are very limited access, like to the subway systems, and are very far out, and not a lot of prosperity. Yeah, it was a great experience. Kind of, we were in the suburbs of New York City, so a little bit, nicer. We weren't well off, but quite a contrast. And you could see where communities rally around these institutions, but they also take hold of them. There's a lot of politics, unions, and sort of, you see how money's spent, how decisions are made. You see how, decisions aren't made as well as in a for-profit setting. You see how there's different incentive structures. But, I was going in there at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I mean, that's a lot of that's through osmosis at the time. Yeah, and I remember my father when I was very young, like he's like, I was like, I'll be a teacher like you one day. He was like, promise me you will never, ever be a teacher. And I don't think he was saying like don't be an educator, but like that's just not a great life. And he felt like he was working too hard and just ate too much, I think, shit to want me to be in the same position.
So what led you then were you straight into being an accountant, like as you explained to Lauren, or?
I mean, I always was like sort of business minded growing up, kind of finance and economics oriented. In like the 8th grade, me and a few guys in a gifted program won the like Long Island stock market competition for middle schoolers, and I was always watching like things like Family Ties, and I was interested like Alex Bikini, but I had much liberal arts interests as well, and I wanted to grow up and be a film producer. But yeah, I went to college. I knew I wanted a career in business. I thought for a long time it would be investment banking or finance. As you get exposed to these areas, sort of, I think my soul just didn't want to really jive or vibe with them. And I just found, I went into public accounting, and I found I detoured a little bit. I went to film school. I went into film production, and I just kind of, in the film and TV industry, I just kind of fell back a lot on my finance and accounting skills and tried to help, and just fell into the roles of helping a lot of individuals and entities that just didn't have skills in that department. But Yeah, I like numbers. So yeah, I think I always wanted to work in money, but you kind of start looking at certain fields and you're like, oh, I don't think that's a way to none of these things appealed to me in a way like I wanted them to be my life. And I wanted to go to conferences about being a public accountant and helping audit books. And, I didn't want that to be 24/7 for me and how their kids thought of their father. So I just sought out, I think, opportunities and roles that kind of allowed me to be a comfortable wolf and just get and extract what I could and wanted out of the system without giving up everything. So maybe not getting everything, but just not giving up maybe all my time and all my mental space. But that's a battle. I think I read your book and I've talked. I mean, you know what that's like and how soul draining those institutions can be. And I'm still in that so those fiat minds. Um
What's that right? You're
yeah
still you're straddling both worlds right now.
yeah totally
Right.
very much still in the fiat minds and corporate accounting. I work for a large my client is a large Fortune 100 company. And I jump from various roles there, putting out fires, uh, but
Dude, and you're running a
yeah,
podcast at the same time. Like that's
yeah.
a
Well,
lot
that's a
of work.
passion project. It's a labor of love. It's not terribly financially fruitful, but I get a lot out of it. But it's a lot of time. It's a big burden on my wife and kids to kind of have that project on top of the job. And
Mhm.
figure all that out. That's how much I love Bitcoin and wanted to have conversations with Bitcoin. And I wanted to stop bothering people in my real life who didn't want to talk
I was
about
gonna
it,
that was gonna
and
be the
there's
question.
a
Like
whole lot of reasons I started the pod, but
these
so
these large corporations that you've worked for and helped, do they know that you're Cedric Youngelman from the Bitcoin Matrix podcast? And do they have any
no, not at
questions about
all.
that? No?
No, I wouldn't hide it. And when I was I haven't been in an office in 4 years now.
Hmm.
And I've kind of, when COVID hit, none of us were in the office. And after about 2 years of that, we moved, and all my work and clients are still back, where it was, and they just take me on because I can get stuff done from wherever I am. And I was 3 4 days remote, or 2 3 days remote anyway before that. And no, they don't really know. But like when I was in the office, I would talk to like some what I thought might be like sleeping lions, or people who kind of interested in these things. And I also like to run like just sort of like objective surveys. So I could either dribble out a little information, no information, just see how people respond and just kind of do test cases. Cause I know that Bitcoin Twitter and Bitcoin podcast could be a bubble. And it's nice to just bounce things off people or see what happens to them over time if you touch them on the Bitcoin thing. But in the last 2 years, no, I don't bring up that I live in a nice sunny place. I don't bring up Bitcoin, none of it.
That's
So
crazy. Like because you've had the best of the best on the show, right? Like the biggest of
yeah,
the
no, and
names.
no, but I don't even know if they would know those names.
They will one day, that's for sure, right?
Sure,
They must know
and anyone is,
Sailor.
I don't know. I've
Really?
sat down with like $1 billion, like the VP of finance control of $1 billion company. This was 2.5 years ago, and I was, they were going through this process. This is great. They make appliances and glassware, so they use palladium and rhodium and gold in their manufacturing and production process. But there's zero waste. There's no leakage. They have 3 ounces of palladium, and you're gonna fire up the ovens and still have 3 ounces. And they owned all this. And as I was onboarding, they had just finished up doing a huge sale leaseback, right? They sold the hard assets and were now leasing them. And this was all in the, trying to raise cash. So they were moving everything to cash. I mean, this is 2.5 years ago. Because they were PE owned and they weren't going to be able to be sold. And so I got to pay off some loans and this, that, and the other. But like, I was like, hey guys, you're sitting on 100 million in cash. And I brought this up to control, but the controller is brand new, the CEO is brand new, the CFO is brand new, the CMO is brand new, the COO is brand new, right? So none of them have political capital and none of them have sway in the organization. Who's going to put their neck out on the
No
line?
one. Because
Right? And the
the career
controller,
risk.
yeah, he was kind of playing with crypto. He kind of understood these hard asset things, but he was like, Who's going to listen to me? Now, if they put, 1 to 10% into Bitcoin at the time, I mean, they would have solved their problems in 6 to 12 months. And in 2, 3 years would have obliterated, their issues. But that's not an easy, it's a conversation of two. And you need like 20 people at the organization willing to put their neck on the line to get something like that across.
It's so crazy how so far, like, if you're not watching the story of MicroStrategy as a CFO or as a CEO, this is a publicly listed company. This is on the NASDAQ and has just obliterated any other stock out there. How is no one still asking that question? And with all the ETFs now, all of that noise as well, it's madness that is still.
Michael Saylor, though, I mean, first of all, they had 500 million of reserves, and he understood that you can't liquidate that or give that back to shareholders. You got to keep the lights on, your promises to stakeholders and clients and customers, and so he gets that. But he also has a large stake in the company. So he could say, we're going to go on this investigation, and all of you need to read these 3 books and listen to these 7 podcasts and get back to me with your thoughts, arguments, and ready to have a debate. No one else in any of these instances, they're like, what do I need to go home at 5 o'clock?
Mhm.
What do I need to go home at 7:30 tonight? What do I need to just go home and like make it to the end of the quarter so that like I can get a job somewhere else? And I don't know, all these organizations that the CFO comes in on day one, he's like, I'm here to cut costs, and he's got, he's going to be here for 18 to 36 months. And basically he's just going to go through the whole organization with a ratchet. I'm at the kind of Fortune 100 company where they need to cut costs. They told Wall Street, we're going to cut costs. They will literally say, you know what? It's 7 o'clock tonight. Put out a memo that at 6 a.m., every consultant around the world is on frozen for the next 30 days. Every single consultant, whether they're backfilling a job, whether they're on a special project, every single one. We have 6,000. Okay, 600 get carved out. The other 5,400 gone. Okay, at noon, we get a call from London. Wait a minute. The people that are supporting the stores in London are United States contractors, and we don't have anyone on the phones. Okay, get those guys back, right? Like this is how it's done. There's no like, hey, where are we going to be in 17 quarters? Or it's like, hey, we're a healthcare company. We're benefiting from COVID. We're going to have sales up to wazoo. No one's thinking about. No one in FPA goes, hey, maybe we're going to have to pay the pharmacists more money to dole out the drugs. Maybe if the pharmacists don't show up, we're going to close stores or have limited hours and we don't have the throughput. Like FP&A, everybody's like, well, everything's going to go up by 2.75% next year because Powell said, that whole organization is just a complete waste of time, energy, effort. There's no real direction coming out of what? Audit. There's no value add coming out of FP&A. There's no mark to market at anywhere in the world on any of these assets. Do you think anyone's at CBRE going, maybe we should start marking everything down 25, 30% because every office? No, they're saying, I think things are going to bounce back. We're going to get people to come back to the office in the next quarter. And none of it's real. And nobody cares about the long term. Like, they're all LARPing. You're all role playing. Like you're at the meeting. You just say what you need to say.
It's so true. And that's why that is the stark difference with Saylor, because of like the way he was so integral and integrated into like his own company, like that
longest running public CEO of in history.
Right. So how does no one know?
Who's been through these
like,
ups and downs? Have you seen his early interviews where like he's in board meetings? I've read these. Like he's in I don't know if it was Vogue or someone did like a 20-page interview of him like in 2002. I mean, he's been through accounting scandals. He's been through the .com. He's been through the software boom. Like he you can go back to interviews and he'll the passion he's had for everything he's involved in and believed in, and the conviction because he's putting in the work and he has the vision. is astounding. But it's not unusual for him, I think, to really be visionary and to see things like this and to really want to be a part of helping. And then he's, because of his experience as a CEO, which is essentially a salesman or an actor on behalf of the company. I mean, his oratory ability is up there with like Marlon Brando, and then he can write his own script. So that marriage is amazing. And then to have the belief in Bitcoin, wow, it's just, it's an interesting person in the world today.
So what I'm hearing you say, Cedric, is don't hold out for any big announcements too soon from S&P 500 companies that are going to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet and have that as the center point of their growth strategy over the next 5 to 10 years. Because no one gives a fuck. It's just about getting through the next few quarters.
I'll never say no. I mean, we're getting into prognostications, and I don't want to be right on that one. And I don't see how they don't wake up. I mean, their fiduciary duties being just it's beyond negligence, it's practically criminal.
It is.
And so and Larry Fink is now blowing the trumpet. So I think that kind of changes things. The Bitcoin will be discussed way more in CNBC. Every one of these executives, when you log into your Fidelity, your Wells Fargo, your Merrill Lynch, like whether you're in the Bitcoin ETF or not, you're going to see those percentage gains posted with the DGIA, with the S&P, with the NASDAQ. It's going to be so in their face. But no, I don't expect, a stampede of mission-driven companies. But I do think when MicroStrategy is in the S&P 500 and 18 months from now, when all these high net worth individuals just have called up their brokers and said, yeah, just give me a 10% allocation to this Bitcoin thing, move, give me 50% of whatever I have in gold in that gold ETF and get it over there. I think, yes, things start to really change. And maybe it's more of a slow creep. Like we bought 100 Bitcoin today. It doesn't have to be like we are now going to, but in 5 years, I mean, how could not every public company have a chief Bitcoin officer? Because what Saylor has done, and I think about this with your own personal life. So Bitcoin, is very powerful from when you get your first few sats and you got sovereignty and immutability. But this unit of account thing is really, I mean, like when you think in Bitcoin, personally, professionally, as a corporation, it transforms your balance sheet and your ability to manage risk and volatility and understanding of it through your own going through some cycles. So, when when Bitcoin goes up, what, $1,000, MicroStrategy's balance sheet gets what, like a $250 million equity infusion, which is 3 to 5 years of net income.
Mm-hmm.
That he's got 2,000 people busting their humps year round, giving up time with their family. That he's like, yeah, no, stay in Hong Kong for 3 more days, close the deal, don't come home. Like, and they're just making that like 15, 30 times a year when Bitcoin goes. I mean, it just utterly changes that company. It makes it a Berkshire Hathaway. And it just starts to eat everything. First, now we can capital allocate on a basis he didn't have before and just buy things that maybe are valuable or going to be valuable. But people just want to give him money, and he can then go and speculative attack Wall Street. And we have this debate on Twitter whether it's better than the ETF, whatever. But like he can do these things for the shareholders that are either there now or want to come on board. And he's a large shareholder.
This recent offering, I think it was 500 million or 600 million, or 2 tranches of each of the. I can't remember exactly. Did you see the amount of interest he was offering for that?
It was like 75 basis points or 65 basis points.
6%.
This is insane.
People are falling over themselves to take.
And I'm not recommending people go out and get leverage, but this is no different than you taking out a HELOC to unlock equity in your home or whatever it might be to get some debt. But he's getting the debt incredibly cheap, and he has a business that brings in income. So you can't compare. Everyone's situation is not the same, but he has the ability to manage this. But what it's done, and then I think what they're going to do with Lightning, putting MicroStrategy products on Lightning, business intelligence on Lightning, all of a sudden now go from maybe, a not so exciting business software company, intelligent company, to, next level world class deliverer of what could be a whole suite of products. Especially when, like, why aren't every single awards at every single company sats on Lightning? Right? Just get rid of your rewards program. Just give me sats. Now they're universal.
Mhm.
I go to Starbucks, which I don't go to Starbucks, but you know what I mean. You go to Starbucks, you fly in United, wherever you do, wherever you spend your money, you get a few rewards. Why aren't you giving me sats? Your 401k, as soon as you sign up with your company, like through Microsoft, Office 365, you got a wallet, you can get some sats right away for, your employee through your 401k half contribution, you get sats back. I mean, all different things. So he can embed all those products in his company. And so it changes the balance sheet, and then it changes the income statement and the statement of cash flows. So
Man, it must be so interesting for you to look at this from someone who's like, deeply rooted in that accounting fiat world, and then just to see what's going on in the Bitcoin world. How, oh man, you must be
it's
so conflicted, like
well, it's like
every
having a
day.
death. I don't know. You ever experience a death and like, but and like the world just stops. Like, you see the leaves floating, and you're just like, everything's different now. Like, my best friend's gone, or my
Mhm.
dad's gone, and like nothing matters. And like, I had that moment listening to like a Bitcoin Tina podcast. Like, whoa, like I walked out of this huge corporate building, and you're just looking at the world around you, and people are running into CVS, and they're running into, do you have Boots, or like different pharmacies or
Yeah.
different corner stores, and it's like they don't know. They don't know, like, it's not everything's changed. Like, I just found out, like, not like, it's a discovery and I just found out about it myself, but like they don't know. And like it's gonna be years before they know. And that's something you learn is patience.
Mhm.
And that's what, I mean, the journey, from you find this thing, you might, I said earlier, you came for the gains, but I stayed for the money. I stayed for the unit of account. I stayed for the knowledge. I stayed for the camaraderie. I stayed for be around other truth seekers. But it's not even about I'm a loner a bit, but like I just on my own path of just always seeking truth. And I found something that like I couldn't, there was no more need for debate. In the political sphere or any other spheres in your life, you can kind of get into debates with people and you can have strong conviction and you could feel that they're wrong or something, but you can't prove it. There's a lot of things you can't prove. With Bitcoin, you can prove something, and no one, you know, in the world of business, whatever it is, there's always various kinds of risk. Partner risk. Who you're in business with. Or they're drunk, they're cheat, whatever it could be. They're not good at business. Their ego. You real estate. You have location risk. You have fashion risk. You open up a bar. Maybe the mayor doesn't give you the liquor license, and this other guy had an inside track. Whatever it is, all these various risks that you cannot mitigate or get to zero. And my whole life, I was looking for something where there was no risk, that it was just a no-brainer. Not necessarily a no-brainer for everybody, 'cause then, there's no opportunity, but something that it's like, but even if it was, just something that no one could get between me and the thing and debase it or take it away or anything of that sort. And that's on top of, just before I found Bitcoin, you spend 30% of your time, I try to spend all my time at work and then go home and be with my family. But now I'm spending half of that time trying to figure out the perfect portfolio, which is just trying to recreate money
Mhm.
because the money's broken. And you're like, how do I get this basket of goods that's going to be like the perfect money and just maintain or maybe hopefully increase my purchasing power? So, as someone, public education and went to school, got a, bachelor's of science in finance and a master of science in accounting and steeped in Keynesian economics, all of a sudden now, you're learning about Austrian economics and, cryptography was never something that I was spending. I mean, that sounded cool, but I was never like, well, let's go spend an hour on cryptography. Why is immutability important? Um, and honestly, I thought blockchain was the value add in the beginning, a triple ledger accounting, and we were going to not just dematerialize money, but we were going to continue on this path. And it's embarrassing now. There's no value in a terrible, database. But, trying to understand this thing is, great. We fixed the money. We got this 21 million, but what else can we fix? And, I got this new tool and Just like in the legacy financial world, I'm going to diversify. Why I got digital gold. Why wouldn't I want a little digital silver? Maybe a little digital copper, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to relearn a lot of different things. And that's what's fun about Bitcoin is challenging yourself, and it's very humbling. Um,
And I see a stack of books looks very much similar to mine. So I gotta ask, when you started changing, because that's what happens to us, what were your wife and kids saying? Because here's dad, Mr. 9 to 5, Fiat corporate guy, does his thing. That's nice. But now he's talking about this other thing, which is a complete opposite to anything he's ever believed.
yeah, so I don't know. I think it was more like, here he is. He's got another thing that he's latched on to
Right.
and won't let go
What is
of.
it
And he's like,
now?
yeah,
Like,
what is it now?
why can't he just go?
And when is this going to end? And when is this phase going to be over? And I'm not so much a phase person, but I do latch on to things. I'm going from thing to trying to find it. And thinking about sort of like the podcast, this was the first thing that my wife was the first one-way trading thing I'd never want to let go of. But like it's a topic that was endlessly fascinating and just wouldn't be exhaustible. And I think I've always wanted to do something like a podcast, and there's so many reasons I started a podcast and when I did, and a lot of that too with COVID. One of them was, I'd be coming home talking about, this cartoon character on Twitter that's going to change my idea about the whole financial system, and I'd be trying to convince my wife of these ideas. And eventually she did become a Bitcoiner. And one of the reasons, I'd be coming home and she'd be listening to McCormick every day in the kitchen. And he's got a nice British accent. I'm like,
I
oh,
was going to
fuck
say,
this.
that
Maybe
must have
I should
just been the
start a
accent.
podcast. Well, let me put my hat in the ring and maybe you'll listen to me, but, you know, um, yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know if they see the change now yet because I think it was just another thing. And one of the things I started the show was so I could stop talking and bothering them about it and talk to people who wanted to talk about it and also talk to people who wanted to take the conversation further
Yeah.
and not just let me unload and download and offload and, sort of harass them. My kids were very young, so I read them books and stuff, but they're like, I get it, Dad. Bitcoin's the best money. Leave me alone. I got any money, like, what am I going to do with that information?
How old are
Um,
they?
11 and 7.
Younger than Bitcoin.
Yeah, younger than Bitcoin. So they're just going to grow up in it,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I just remember, COVID came and now I was just permanently not going in the office anymore. So now all of a sudden I couldn't just like take an hour and a half and skip out of the cubicle and go listen to a pod during lunch or back and forth on the commute. And I had to sort of defend that time. Like, hey, I'm going to go walk you're going to go do what? Like, why aren't you fixing that light bulb? Why aren't you doing you're home, get some things done. And you got a minute. And I wanted to defend that time. But I recognized that COVID, just like Bitcoin, was going to change everything for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if I don't come out of this with a new skill and use this as an opportunity instead of just sitting here and, I was getting some feedback. People would be like, oh, why don't you start a podcast? And I didn't want to be on a soapbox. But one of the things I thought about was unlike any other world that I was interested in, like I had access to Bitcoiners that people would be interested in hearing. So I could DM Pierre Richard, who I once tried to hit up for an accounting job at Kraken, and I drunk DM'd him on a Saturday night, hey, Pierre, I want to start a Bitcoin show. I have no more excuses not to do this. Would you come on the show? And at 8 a.m., he's like, yeah, I'm in. Like, why don't we do it this week?
That's the key. I just want to stop you there for anybody else listening. And cheers, by the way. Lauren just snuck me in a beer. So what do you have? What are you packing?
A double IPA from a local brewery in Florida.
Beautiful. I've got a local IPA from one of our local breweries. But you said the key. You said the key 2 words there. No excuses. And that was the same.
I ran out of them.
When I realized, okay, like you're your barrier to entry is zero. I'm like, how many excuses do you need to keep telling yourself? You have a laptop, you have a pair of headphones, and a free Zoom account. You're done. You are done. And you have this
I didn't even know
burning
it was that
desire to
easy.
talk.
But you have barrier entries. I mean, I ended up thinking I didn't have a microphone. I didn't know you could just get Zoom and it was free even. I just didn't think about any of this. So we had a friend of a friend who was doing podcasts and they were using a producer. So like I hired a producer, which 6 weeks in, I found out not your keys, not your show.
Right.
And I had to fight over getting my show back, and I was willing to throw the whole thing in the garbage if I couldn't get my keys. But yeah, I ran out of all these excuses. I had the time now, or at least I really wanted to do the work. I wanted to listen to more podcasts. I wanted to read books. And so I wanted to defend it. Like, I'm doing this for the show, guys. Like, it's not just for me. And I wanted to ask questions. I would listen to podcasts, and I remember looking, I started, you do a little market research. I'm like, how many Bitcoin podcasts are there? Where would I fit into the mix? And I literally going through the matrix. I'm like, is anyone else from New York? I don't see that. Okay. Like, because I know Princey's got this great accent, people like that. And, whatever it is, people, so I'm like, okay. Is anyone around my age? Well, I'm like, well, Princey's around my age, guys, but, he's in Europe. I got a different accent. So, and I remember looking at him, Princey wrote a book. Well, that's not an excuse not to do the show just because he's got a book. Like, you ran out of them. And I think that just like then, and I'll say it now, like there's going to be more content, whether you think you're late now, or you're going to think you're late in 4 years from now. And basically, in anything you do, you're never too late. There's always going to be a need for more voices, more people to relate to certain things. And everyone goes through even their podcast journey. Like they listen to this kind of podcast for 9 months because they like the host, or they want to listen to something philosophical. They want to gain conviction. They achieve all those goals, and they're like, I want to learn more about security now because now I'm really in and I've learned a little bit and I have a little stash and I want to figure out what to do with it. So I got to spend some time over here. Or maybe someone's like, oh, now that I'm here, I want to do something entrepreneurial. So I want to listen to this kind of podcast, or I want to listen to someone more like me, or I want to listen to someone less like me and challenge myself. And so there's always going to be new voices. And you're always amazed. You look around and be like, wow, well, this person's doing it, or that person, or they just started. Well, they're always not all these people are going to last. I mean, you know how much work it is.
Yeah.
It's like a full-time job. I do a lot of it during my job. I sneak it in and I try to get it all done. And so it doesn't interfere with the rest of my life, but it's an incredible, just booking people as a job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, early in the beginning, I mean, I can't imagine, I can't even imagine going back to the beginning and redoing it, but climbing that mountain, but like the courage of Bitcoiners to come on the show before I even put out work. But, the other side of the coin is like, you haven't put out any work, or you haven't put out much work, and they might show up late. They might cancel. And it's not because they're bad people or something, but like they have very busy lives, and most people have been so kind, so generous, but like over 187 episodes for myself. I mean, there's been a cancellation, and there are times where like I try to do my thing in the nights and evenings. But there are some guys where I'm like, okay, we're gonna squeeze this in and do it. And I take a day off from work, and they cancel that morning. I burn a PTO day, or that kind of thing. There's a real cost to it. Just a lot, because I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm just gonna whip it together and turn on Zoom, and we're just gonna have fun, and like I think there's space for that, and if you can nail that. But like I do a lot of preparation. I want there to be a lot of signal per minute of the show. I'm like, for me, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to talk to these people. So I'm like, I want to make the most of it for myself. Because when I started the show, something I said to myself is like, what if I'll record a bunch of these? I don't have to put them out.
Mm-hmm.
And what if they're no good? I don't put them out. But if I do like them and I put them out, who cares if anyone listens? Like, for me, at the minimum, it was a time capsule for my children.
Right.
Because I was like, here we are in COVID. Here I am new to my Bitcoin journey. Like, how can I give them some sort of roadmap? And maybe we won't find the answers on these shows, but at least they'll hear my questions, like what I think is important to kind of figure out. And that's also something that's interesting with shows, because you get into this whole thing about like who should you have on the show, and purity tests, and this, that, and the other. And I try to, for my show, I try to feature the guests, let the guests speak, but also let the audience think for themselves. I mean, obviously, I'm going to counter if I complete this, but I'm trying to invite people on the show that I agree with most of the things they say, or not agree, but I think their ideas are interesting and worth thought and consideration. And if 5% of what they say is not where I agree, like, I don't know if I need to make a mountain of that all the time, depending on how egregious it might be. But I let the audience think for themselves, and have that opportunity to hear from the guest, and I don't think going into a place and hearing things that you don't agree with is necessarily the worst thing in the world. I think there should be more of that in the world. I wish people would share more of their real opinions in the public sphere.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
sorry for
More
that
open
ramble,
dialogue.
but
Have you yeah, I had a question on the tip of my tongue there. Yeah, and people also think about, should I start a podcast? How am I going to monetize it? And that's the first thing that comes across their minds. And thankfully for me, I never ever thought about that. And I think that's what really helps. So if anybody's listening and you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yeah, but you've got show sponsors. Cedric's got a few. I've got a few. Obviously, some of the bigger names have crazy huge ones. Don't go in with that mindset, because you'll give up after like 10 episodes or
yeah.
something.
Well, I'd say, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of money in podcasting. Uh, and I value my sponsors greatly, but I went into it sort of like you, like not caring about sponsors because I had my day job and I didn't need sponsors. And I kept that attitude, and I do the show for me 100%. And I'll only take on sponsors that I believe in as much as I can, know about any company, and will offer value, but will not give me any sort of like, what are you doing here or there? And no one has.
Yeah. Do you
But
have any like written contracts or anything like that, or is just all kind of gentleman's agreement? Let me shill your product, and
I haven't done a contract. I think if any of their departments have sent me a contract, and that's a whole full-time job, just like trying to get sponsors, talk to them.
yeah,
And I don't think until you're in the upper echelon is there really, but to do it for the money would be a whole misnomer. Just even if it eventually got there, because you won't get there to what you're saying. And I think that to the extent for me that any money is involved, it's to just justify the time away from my wife and kids at this point. I would literally make more time Ubering. But like I enjoy this more, so I'm willing for the cost benefit. I get a lot out of it. I get to ask the questions I'm interested in. For me, it was a really big deal, like to go to conferences, and I wanted to be someone at a conference who's contributing in some way. And that would be only, so I've gotten a lot out of it from that, the network, the knowledge I've gained.
yeah. I was going to say
Sorry.
that's the hidden value, isn't it? When one of the conference organizers reaches out and said, "Would you mind coming along and just hosting a panel?" Like, because you're a shoe-in, right? You're used to interviewing people, and you've probably faced the people on the panel before. Many people organizing these conferences around the world are not conference organizers, haven't been beforehand, and we're all just plebs, just mucking in together, trying to make this thing work. And that's what I found. Like, wow, if the podcast has given me anything, it's this ability to, add value in some way to the conference, and it's just very humbling in a way to be invited along to them and to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think, the conferences, especially when you're early on in your journey, they're really hard to think about whether you should attend, whether you should spend your hard-earned money on that instead of getting sats. Especially, I remember at the earliest conferences I was thinking about attending, like deepest bear market, I'm down in dollar terms. Wife and kids haven't bought into this thing yet. I use that word bought loosely, but understand where this is going and why we're doing this. And then just, think, especially, if that might be a sizable amount of stats you might be able to add to your stack. I do think there's tremendous value in meeting Bitcoiners, though, and finding that there are other like-minded crazy lunatics like yourself. I think that's been invaluable. I'm a bit of a loner, so I might even be at the conference like off to my side, or like but introverted, but we'll talk about Bitcoin kind of thing. Um, so yeah, but I think that's really hard. I think for people who haven't met people in real life, I don't know, I can't imagine what that's like. But I also understand sort of like, well, I haven't met anyone in real life. What could that really bring me? And should I just stack sats with this? Especially in those moments where like you are on an island and it's a bear market and no one believes you and it's hard, I think, to take time off from work to do that. So it's just also the time. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to spend money and then take time off, which is a cost, and time away from family. Now my wife's like, another vacation for yourself. Like, so now I won't really go unless she can come and we can enjoy it together. And she's a Bitcoiner and she gets it. Um, but it doesn't, some people too. And this is something hard that's like, like sort of identifying as a Bitcoiner, because I try not to identify as anything. I'm just me. But if there's anybody I feel camaraderie with, it's Bitcoiners. But there's more to life. Bitcoin's a tool to, I think, make your life better. And I think that's a big part of why I started the show was this notion of like, like, oh, I'm just going to stack sats and everything's going to work out. Like, I think that can work out and will mathematically, but I want to be a part of contributing to, I guess, a better world or a better place or just a better life for myself. And I wanted to build something in Bitcoin. And what you were saying, like now that you have the tools, you could start this thing up for free, but like I have a channel now. I can speak to like the world. And no one, other than Zoom or Twitter or YouTube, which I've had a show knocked off of, but like it's I have sovereignty over that. It's a really wild thing.
What your channel
Um,
was knocked off, or one of your
well, no,
interviews?
just an episode was knocked off YouTube, so it's not
Huh.
like I'm operating all this on decentralized platforms.
Yeah,
But
that's
right
tough.
now, for the most part, like they can't really squash the show. But I'm not even talking about freedom of speech. I'm just saying the ability to put a
Mm.
signal out there and talk to people.
What
Um,
episode? What
you
episode
know,
was bumped off?
Jeffrey Tucker. He
Huh.
wrote.
Yeah,
He was one of the, yeah.
he wrote
Um, he was behind
Bourbon
the
for
Great Barrington
Breakfast.
Declaration, and
Bourbon for Breakfast is what I've read of his books.
yeah, he's wrote a bunch. That's probably one of them.
But why was
I'm
that
ashamed I
kicked
haven't read
off?
all of them. So we talk a little bit about COVID and the vaccine. He's
Mm.
not like he doesn't say anything that's crazy controversial. It's still a little controversial, but one of the comments came up in like 12 hours right away. Like, this is the kind of guy that would kill grandma. And it was a comment on the YouTube. And then like 6 hours later, like I had someone DM me on Twitter, like, you should have been kicked off to YouTube. I logged into YouTube and they're like, your show has been, censored for medical information
Yeah.
or misinformation. And I had to go through mind control retraining where they ask you a bunch of questions that are basically, you can talk. You haven't had to deal with this?
I've had
I
one.
know.
Yeah, I've had one ban for my
Did you go
interview
through the
with.
questions
No, I didn't do
to
that.
get your channel
They
back?
they allowed me back on, but
Oh,
I still have a flag, which means they won't kick me up in the algos until I do the mind retraining. But I just refuse to do
okay.
it. So
So I did it just really for the S's and giggles. I wanted to see the questions, and they were as Orwellian
oh my
as it can
God.
get. And you have to answer them correctly, all seven, to get your channel back, or correctly in their terms. But basically, you can't, say anything that goes against what the World Health Organization
Mhm,
or local health authorities say,
mhm.
as per YouTube. I mean, it's fascinating. And as a Bitcoiner, you're like, why would I continue to build here? I mean,
Mm.
they could take it away from me at any time. I'm on the same thing. I got the warning. I got 3 strikes now. The channel's gone. It's that's kind of scary.
Mhm.
Not scary like, ooh, like, Nightmare on Elm Street, but just kind of like, this is horrible that we live in this world. And so I don't know if the algo took me down. I think it was a complaint from a user if I really had a bet on it, but it might have been the
Mm.
algo. I mean,
I
he does,
had I had an interview with Pascal Najadi. That was what got my channel nuked. I'm pretty sure, if I remember rightly, talking about COVID and the injections, and he was suing the Swiss president. Uh, so yeah, that was soon taken down, and that interview itself is never to be seen again. Might still be up on audio somewhere. I can't remember. I think I
yeah, mine's
uploaded
still
it
up
to.
on audio.
It might be up on Bitcoin TV as well because I was kicking a bunch over there at one stage. But yeah, it's and that's the thing, right? Because you want to talk about whatever you want on the podcast, but always in the back of your mind.
Do you ever worry about like talking about something so controversial?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And then you're self-censoring straight away. So they've won,
right.
you know? Oh, what are the rabbit holes I've been down just most recently? You know, I think I've been at the denial stage for years of what the conspiracy theorists would call chemtrailing. But what the billionaires who invest in SRM call solar solar reflective modification. And when you realize that, oh, right, so they've got this nice term for it and a bunch of patents, and Gates and Soros have invested hundreds of millions into this stuff, and it just sits over here, and the WEF discuss it, and all of the European parliaments discuss it, and these think tank people discuss it under SRM. But if you and I discuss it now and we call it chemtrails, it's like, oh, those fucking weird Bitcoiner dudes, like they think everything's a freaking conspiracy, right. Blah, blah, blah. So you see what they do. The psyop is so strong. But then when you actually read up on that technology that they're trying to deploy under the guise of, if we reflect the sun's rays away from the earth, then the temperature won't rise as quickly because of, we, us dirty humans, have trapped all the carbon dioxide. Oh my God. It's just so unbelievable. And then when you see the lines in the sky, you can't unsee them again. You're like, So, yeah. But should we be talking about this kind of stuff? Is this going to get us taken down from YouTube? Is this going to lose some of our audience members? Is this going, it's all of these thoughts go on.
How do you deal with it in real life? When you meet your kids, the dads and the moms, do they know about Bitcoin? Do they know about the podcast?
Yeah, they do. I've got to the point now where just wait for them to ask rather than say anything, or listen for the pain point, listen to what they're complaining about, and just offer the fact that there are solutions out there for these kind of problems.
Do they I think of if you tell someone you're a podcaster, it's dirty. It's like telling someone you're a day trader, and they just say, yeah, okay, you're talking to 14 people. Do they? And then I'm worried, we always are they going to tune in? Are they going to listen to that one episode about chemtrails and
mm-hmm.
Maybe boycott the kids kind of thing? Do you have any? Do you deal with that at all? Or
I've certainly thought about it. Yes, 100%. Those thoughts always go through my mind, and they shouldn't, right? That's the thing. They shouldn't affect what you want to sit down and talk about with somebody else openly, because you cannot control the way that other person is going to think about it. That is the essence of critical thinking, right? You actually want them to question things about what we're talking about, because that opens up the discussion even further, not just to take it. I mean, how easy would it look if we were like, hey, yo, buy Bitcoin. Okay, I will. We're not in that world. It's going to take a lot of effort to undo. And this all comes back to the brainwashing and indoctrination gulags of the state education system around the world. We have to unschool ourselves. I mean, Ivan Illich, his book is back there, Deschooling Society. These aren't new ideas. Murray Rothbard wrote Education Free and Compulsory. These books have been around a long time. And we're probably 3 or 4 generations deep into this mass schooling exercise. So when people do see someone a little bit different, or hear them say something a little bit counter narrative, stay away from those people.
I was the kid. I mean, my parents were teachers, but my report card, I would get 99s, 98, 99, 97, 98. And then the 2 comments I would get was disruptive and prevents others from learning. And my parents were like, what are you doing? I'd be like, well, fuck them. Like, they're wrong about everything. And what do you mean they're wrong? I'm like, listen, I got everything right on the test, but like he said this and I don't agree, and he said that I don't agree, or and I would crack jokes, or whatever, make other kids laugh, and but I'm like, we got the information. Obviously, I did okay on the grades, but I was always sort of, you could tell what you were being told. I mean, I loved sort of challenging authority, and I think that's what really appealed to me about Bitcoin as well. Is like sort of those people, and when I first kind of heard about it, was challenging my thinking and forcing me to not learn something new, but just to like see something different and reinvestigate it, and then sort of, I think it made learning fun again. I was
Yep.
getting burned out working, whatever, arguing with people about this, that, and how to fix the world. What can we do? And what was so great about Bitcoin is you could say, stop. Like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to take all that land that we all want to live on and get all of us to agree how to make it better. Like, I'm just going to go over here and take care of my own little plot of land. And I can get out of this. And I can completely, not on like, and I think that's where I think my family would see the change is, with low time preference, like becoming less concerned over certain things, and appreciating the low time preference things more, and getting your life back, getting your time back, getting your mental time back, if anything.
You guys moved house, right? Moved
Yeah,
state.
we moved cross country.
Was that
Uh,
something do you think you would have ever done if you'd just stayed in your fiat like kind of life? Or did Bitcoin help you come to that decision, or was
I
this
think,
something already on the
it's hard
card?
to strip out. Bitcoin definitely, it's like, and once you have a tool, like you can't say like, oh, I would have done it without this tool. Like whether you would have or wouldn't have, like you now have the tool, and Bitcoin gave me a lot of more faith and conviction and just decisions I was making. It was a very difficult time, but I think I would have made that decision without Bitcoin because of the just things were going with COVID and certain rules and laws and the way my kids were affected. But Bitcoin let me manage that risk of giving up my job because originally to do it, I gave up my job, and didn't get it back till the other side. And because my dad was getting very sick at that time, and ended up dying during that transition. And so like he died like 3 weeks after I got to Florida, and we moved to his town, and I remember even just having conversations with him as a Bitcoin was near highs at that point and was like going down, and my dad at like 81 years old was like, he owned some sats, and he didn't fully understand it, but like I was like, I'd sold my house and was financing some of the move and inflation, with that, and trying to, he's like, you haven't sold any of your sats, right? No, dad. And it was interesting to see him on his deathbed concerned about, and really seeing the like Bitcoin maybe as a secret decoder ring, even without with his limited knowledge of it. He was one of the people I would really like to talk to about Bitcoin a lot because he didn't get it at all. And I really
Mm.
wanted him to get it. And he would gradually, um, but yeah, that move was really hard. And it took about a year, to kind of convince the family and
Mm-hmm.
to do it. And I think the big part of I think having the show was really also felt like I hate to say it because I didn't move for the show, but like all the things I was talking about, like weren't being affected, or I wasn't doing if I. But moving is really hard, I mean, I just did a show with Tom Luongo about comfortable wolves, and I think before Bitcoin, I was definitely a comfortable wolf, like trying to, like I don't necessarily think of myself as sheep, but I'm not going to fight the fiat system by myself, and I don't think anyone who is fighting it, like Peter Schiff, is going to win with gold. So I'm like, what are we going to do? But doesn't mean I'm happy with it. But with Bitcoin, I'm like, okay, I got a tool now. And then with COVID, like it was just more horrible things coming your way that you had to fight, whether you like, the level of uncomfortability was just rising dramatically for
Mm.
someone like me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe a lower tolerance for just my sovereignty or independence being crept upon, and then my kids being home from school, I was realizing like, hey, like my father wasn't saying don't be an educator, but like I'm still working this job. I don't have all day to educate them. And then when I was getting much more insight into what they were learning about, which was like all rabbits and feelings and bunnies and, no math, no science, no, you know, and so all those things coming together, it was like, we have to move. Yeah, Bitcoin was a big part of it, but I don't, and that's the thing. And maybe this is my sense of, maybe it's a lack of humility, but I'd like to think like I've always been on this journey. I was always looking for something like Bitcoin. I was always looking for Bitcoin. I was just, and that doesn't mean that like I was someone who was like, cypherpunk. I'm not saying like I was like on that tip. I was just saying I was always looking for more freedom or just being not, I don't want to be boxed in, but I wasn't necessarily like a revolutionary either. Bitcoin fit in nice that way. It's like this peaceful thing, because I don't think necessarily people who are laying down arms are going to slay Goliath right now.
No.
And Bitcoin, I think, is the Second Amendment of money.
Well, you feed it if you fight it as well, right? That's the thing, and it's just like it.
Right.
Just ignoring it and opting out of it is the peaceful revolution. And like, okay, what do I need to sacrifice? My dollars. Okay, no problem. They're sacrificial. Goodbye.
I mean, it was a simple A/B test in a lot of ways. You look at this Bitcoin thing, and you're like, okay, it's when I came in, it was worth like 5,000 a coin. You're like, okay, that sounds like a lot of money. And you read a little history, and you're like, oh yeah, it was this guy who spent like 10,000 Bitcoin to buy like a pizza. And now, like, it's completely inversed. Like now, like a month has gone by, and it's $10,000 to buy a Bitcoin. And like, which way do I think this is going to continue to go? Is this a fluke? And you say, oh, it's Beanie Babies, and then someone's like, dude, Beanie Babies wasn't fucking software. And you're like, okay, no, that's a really good argument. Like a really good argument. And you're like, okay, Amazon crashed more than 90% 3 times. And the only people that held throughout that whole thing were Jeff and his parents. And no, Jeff's parents only held because they loved Jeff. But Jeff knew that what he had was different than pets.com and diapers.com. And if you were early to the internet scene, like you might have bet on all these things, like just like shitcoins, like, oh, there's pets.com, there's diapers.com, and there's going to be all these different. No, it's just going to be one. No, there's not going to be one guy who does it all. But like, Jeff knew, and Jeff didn't even know about AWS and what could be built on top of Amazon. Right. Jeff couldn't have known that then, but like he knew what he had was more valuable and he had to withstand the volatility. So he started looking at this thing and he's just very clear. It's like, okay, dollars are going, wait a minute, they make infinite dollars. That sounds weird, but now that I said they make infinite dollars, is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they never told me how many they're going to make. They never tell me when they're making. They don't even let you know the schedule. And the same thing with stocks. Like you might, like as I was very interested in stocks growing up, stocks, companies, picking the best guy. I got to read a book this big every quarter to figure out where they're lying, where they're telling the truth, where the real opportunity is. Then I have to trust that they're going to execute. Trust that there's no scandals. Like they're not going to be caught on tape doing something that, some no-no, doing something with someone, and like ruin the stock. And then I gotta trust that they're not gonna sell it to all their friends at a discount and dilute my own, or raise debt or whatever. Where is it in for me? And even if I start a small business, now I got to take on the whole world there. Again, I'm back to working 75 hours a week, putting my whole life into this thing. And maybe the cops don't like my business. So this mobster doesn't like it. Or, a new competitor comes along that I just couldn't have seen. And, no one's using that little disc to hold the pizza box up anymore. And the patent's gone, And,
or you get regulated out of it by a bigger company. And it's just.
And so now Bitcoin comes along and it's, wow, like I can get my time back. I don't have to do portfolio construction all day. And I could just sit on this thing. There's no repairs, no maintenance, no property tax, no homeowners insurance. There's no tenants to worry about. I just have to manage the rest of my life and just get now, all of a sudden now, instead of my balance sheet just getting by, like just my income statement needs to get by. I just got to keep plugging along. It's pretty miraculous, and pretty obvious if you think about it, especially in retrospect. Like, it's so weird. Like, I talk to people, like you talk about kids and their dads, and I meet these guys and girls all the time, moms and stuff. And And again, I don't think everyone's sheep, but like it's really hard for them to grok that this thing's different than just a stock or a bond or another thing, and they haven't missed out and they're not too late, and they want to trade against you, not against their future self. So like they look at you and they want to know how much you have or what your buy-in price is, or
Mhm.
and then it's just they want to bet against you. Like no matter what I do, like I don't want to be behind this guy. And my whole life, I got to look up to him, or I got to sound like them. I got to sound like I'm in a cult. And that's gonna be horrible. I got to actually believe in something. I'm gonna stand for something. I don't want to do that because that's really I think Bitcoin is like if you're not gonna stand for yourself, who is? And Bitcoin's one of those things. It's like kind of like put your own oxygen on mask on first. And like I fight with people on that. Like that's selfish of you. Well, I'm gonna die trying to save you
Yeah.
and not being selfish. Like it's just not gonna work out for both of us. And here we are, we've incentivized us all in a positive direction. And then you take all that away, and there's all that BS when the kids, like
Mhm.
honestly, like you talk about surveillance, CBDCs, like, so now it's like on multiple fronts, like you need capital in society to have freedom in our world because of the education system, the food system. Like in a
Mhm.
lot of ways, you have to buy yourself through these things. You can't live in a food desert. That's not going to be healthy. You can't eat healthy at the Dollar General. We have these dollar stores that are becoming the supermarkets of America, and that's just a reflection on money.
Yep.
Like it costs you have to buy the books. Yeah, you have to buy the YouTube subscription so your kids aren't getting bombarded with ads and they could still go on there and find out how to make science experiments. Like
Well,
and
I tweeted the other day the front page, right? The classic front page, Chancellor on brink of
the
second
brink.
bailout for banks. And at the bottom there, it's like there's a little snippet, 99p a pint. I'm like, guys, that was only 2009. I could have gone out with a fiver, met my mates in the pub, had 4 pints, and come back with over £1 in change. Now you cannot get 1 pint for £5 in
Right.
most pubs, in
And it
most
tastes
parts
the
of England.
same. It's not a
It's
bigger
the
pint.
same
It's not
product and it's the
colder.
same measurement. Like,
Well,
when you try and
that's the argument I used to explain this to my parents. I said, Ma, like you worked your whole life, and at the end of your career, when I say a top paid teacher at public school, I don't mean like, she earned her way to some great deal, but she was just, and maybe she made 75K at the end of 25 years of teaching. And now a beginning teacher makes 85K. I'm making these numbers up. I don't know what the real numbers are, but
Mhm.
like the point is like, but this person has no experience. And the principal who's supposed to be running the school is like, wait a minute. So cost of teachers go up. Yes. Are they better teachers? Are they going to teach the kid? Am I going to get better math results out of this? Not necessarily. Your results are probably going to go down. So it's going to cost more. And think about anything you're doing in the world, like running a pencil factory. How much is the rubber going to cost me next year? Well, the rubber is going to cost more, sir. Why? Well, the guy who's at the rubber factory, he needs a raise. I don't care. Like, why is the cost of these things going up? Shouldn't it be going down? Are we going to consume less of it? Is it going to last longer in the process? Are we going to get more final product out of it? None of these calculations make any sense unless you're operating on a Bitcoin standard and your unit account is real. And I see this all the time with people in their own personal lives. Like, so, they're like, oh wow, like Bitcoins, it's $8,000. And a lot of people think a lot about like, I don't have $8,000 of new
Mhm.
money. They don't think about balance sheet management and reallocation because why? I don't have any conviction in this thing, right? So why would they want to do that anyway? But they're like, that sounds expensive. And it's just hard for them to grok that, um, that this can be a tool that's going to, just put their balance sheet on steroids, that every dollar is going to go up. It's not about that $8,000 increment or the $62,000 purchase. It's about just putting all your money on steroids and understanding what purchasing power is. But it's really hard to kind of get that through to people because they just see it as another fiat opportunity and you're rugging them.
Yeah, that's what people think when I'm trying to explain it to them. I'm just trying to shill it. Maybe I've
Yep.
got I'm trying to sell. Even if I gift a little bit, just to show you how it works, download this app, and you still get the
Oh, I know. Yeah.
go ahead.
No, and it's just showing people sort of like that relationship with money and why, you're buying less and you're not getting more. But on sort of on that Bitcoin standard, like your money's going, you look at a house that cost $500,000 and 5 years ago it cost 500 Bitcoin. Now that house
Hmm.
costs 10 Bitcoin.
Hmm.
So the point was, so like people at that moment in time, they're like, I can't afford this. But because they haven't taken it on then, every new decision is not made with Bitcoin in mind. So maybe they get an unexpected life event 2 years later and they inherit 100 grand, but they haven't put in the work because they dismissed it at 8 grand. And now that they get a 100 grand inheritance, they go out and buy a Mercedes and an in-ground pool for the kids because they haven't, at each time they're not ready. And that's the opportunity, or the luck is, perspiration meets sort of like the opportunity is your luck. And a lot of people don't create the luck for themselves because they don't put in the work before the opportunity comes. So I've seen other situations too where people, again, like maybe their company wants to buy their pension out and will offer them a lump sum now versus, a monthly payment in perpetuity 10 years from now. So they say, okay, 150 grand now versus 5 grand a month 15 years from now. Now it's going to take them 5 years to recoup the 150 just in real terms. But they're thinking, I'm going to live for 20, 30 years. That's so much more money in the future. But if you're thinking in Bitcoin, you're like, wow, I can get 2 Bitcoin now and
Right.
create my own pension and pay myself 5 grand a month in the
Where do I
future
sign?
with where do I sign up? But if you're not thinking like that, you're going to let that go right by you
Hmm.
because you're thinking in fiat terms. And so that's where the power of this thing is just out there with your calculations and how you manage your life. It's beyond just how big your stack is. It's how you're looking at the world. You're looking through that lens. I mean, that's why I call it the Bitcoin matrix. Like you can leave that fiat matrix and think in Bitcoin. The way you look at food, like, a lot of times, like you pick up a jar of food and you're like, this is the healthy one. And yeah, some company slapped the healthy label on it or bought that healthy company and now it's crap food. And you have to do your own research and verify. You have to kind of take that Bitcoin mentality to everything. And same thing with all your financial deals. If you're not thinking of Bitcoin, you're just going to blow it. Um,
So difficult to get people there, man. But when you do, so how often are the epiphanies still dropping for you? Because here you are, you're like a good, well, how many, almost 200 episodes into the podcast. You've had some of the most incredible conversations of your life, like I have,
Thank
with people that have just bent your mind either on the conversation or through their books or through other podcasts that you've listened to them and then thought, I need to get those people on the pod. And it still happens to me. I still wake up at like 3 a.m. with the laser eyes on. I'm like, no. How did I miss that? Like it's honestly, when we say the Bitcoin rabbit hole is never ending, it's true. Because as it unlocks one little faucet of thinking, it would unlock another, then another, then another, then another. Have you had any recently that you
Yeah, I definitely like the comfortable wolves things from Tom Luongo, where he gets very mad if you call everyone sheep. And I really felt that struck a chord with me, trying to explain why some people are just not as angry as I am or haven't moved. It's because they just have a level of comfort that's different than mine or higher tolerance. That was very insightful. It's really led me to be more empathetic and
Mhm.
understanding when people don't get Bitcoin or care. They're like, look, I just bought a new house. I could afford this house payment. Like, literally, I just got everything I want in life. Like, not meaning like they're retired, but they're like, I just want to be here, bro. My
Yeah.
wife's happy. We got the house. Like, the kids got the new yard. Like, we're situated. Like, now you got this other thing that you want me to deal with. I have empathy. I, I, I mean, the revelations may become a little less few and far between, but so many. I mean, anytime I get to put out a killer clip is usually some sort of revelation for myself, and a lot of them sneak up on you. Maybe you do a show and then like 3 months later, like you're saying at 3 a.m., you're like, whoa,
That's
that's
the
really
thing.
interesting. And I still have a lot of those moments. I mean, Bitcoin
My
really kind
daughter,
of.
my 18-year-old daughter said she caught me laying on the couch the other day, just leafing through principles of economics, and something I can't remember the sentence. I'm like,
That book blew my mind.
motherfucker, like one sentence, like, and I'm tweeting it and I'm copying the page, underlining it, blah blah blah. And my oldest says to me, I've tried to read the book, I just can't. Is it because I'm too young? She's 18. Is it because I'm too young that I don't understand it? Is it because the vocabulary? Is it because it's the I'm not so interested in like the content, you know? And I'm like, just read the pages. It will
Right.
come. It will come
How
in
much
two
would you have killed to have that book at 18?
Oh my God. It will come in 2 weeks, in 2 months,
Because I
in
think
two
that's a
years.
book. I think that book helps you with high school.
Yeah.
Like just thinking about how high schoolers act and sort of like, especially ones that are like, why aren't they following the incentive structure of everyone else? Uh, and then, I mean, I want my son to read it basically every 10 years when he starts at 13 or
Mhm.
every 5 years. I think as you grow, I think you would look at that book differently.
Of course. And
Lynn
life
Alden's book.
experiences. And what I
Yeah,
was trying to tell her is like you're gonna come up against, you're gonna bump up a life experience. And your
right.
mind is gonna flash back to a paragraph in this book that's suddenly gonna make sense to you. And you can come back and read it and you will like, right. You know, that is the same epiphanies that has been dropping for me throughout my whole Bitcoin journey.
I think with the pod though, and this was something that was very difficult for me, it was documenting this journey. And I think it's going to be interesting to look back on the time capsule at some point and see how wrong I was. And wrong, I don't mean like directionally, but like whatever, just so much. And it's very exposing in that manner to
Mhm.
share your journey and share your questions. Um, yeah, but the epiphanies
And,
still
and
come
and
a
that's
lot.
one thing I'll ask you about, because we all suffer from a certain amount of imposter syndrome, and I cannot for the life of me keep up. No one can, and be very wary of anybody that claims to be a Bitcoin expert, listeners, because like all this ordinal stuff that's going on right now, I can't keep up with this stuff. I couldn't tell you what it is technologically, but I can tell you what I feel about it ethically and morally. And for me, it's wrong, like what's going on.
Right.
But somebody will come at me from a technical background and bitch slap me all over the place, and or someone's got to come in. I'm thinking, well, which one of these conversations do you host? Do you host them all, or do you go with the one that more ethically is aligned with you? Um, you how much how much are you willing to challenge those ethics? And right now, I see a lot of weird stuff going on Twitter where a lot of people are going to start burning their reputations over this kind of stuff, and it's like it's really sad to see. So yeah, I'd love to know how you think about, I mean, not that one specific, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
many others where like you feel as though you're completely out of your depth and you really have no idea what you're talking about, but you
Well,
want
I would say
to.
a lot of it. I mean, like just in terms of a lot of these like security, privacy. Uh, I mean, I'm interested. They're not my. I'm more interested in the philosophy, the economics, the macro finance. So I chase the topics that I'm interested in. The ordinals thing, I think, is interesting. I think it's trendy. It's not necessarily the thing I want to discuss on a weekly basis. I love what Ocean's doing. I think that this is actually more important than the ordinals thing in terms of that this decentralization of mining pools.
Yeah.
I think is a real Achilles heel and under talked about, under misunderstood, under debated, all that. And I think it's the ordinals thing kind of is like a red herring, and a lot of people kind of don't understand what's really at stake. I think I'm not into ordinals. I'm not for ordinals. I think inscriptions are kind of interesting, you know, but it's not the interesting for me right now. I don't think the ordinals is interesting at all for me. There's JPEGs. I don't care. I don't even care about the debate. And so I'll gloss over some of those tweets, but I haven't done a lot of shows on that just because I don't think it's deep enough for me. And I think that other people can cover some aspects of that very well. But I think the ocean thing, I'm going to talk to Bob Burnett more about that. I want to have
Mm,
the mechanic on and
mm.
Luke. I'm involved in that project, and I think the mining thing is crucial. And I think the ordinals things plays into it. I think it's an attack. I do think it's an attack. I think it's a bit of a state-sponsored attack. I think there are bad actors behind it. I don't think there's a large gray area here. I have a lot of conviction about it, but I'm not the one who's going to argue it. I'm not going to spend the time figuring out the arguments for it. And I do agree with some of the people who are speaking out in the way I'm leaning, but it's not for me. I want to vet other things or do more research in other areas right now. Maybe that will come up more. I am trying to get around the ocean and the decentralized mining pools, and ordinals will fit into that, of course. And I understand how it's a big part of it. But other than that, I mean, it's like NFTs for the whole NFT side of it. I just have no interest in it, like that whole sector. And I think a lot of it's like noise and aside from the long-term attack that's happening, which I think is very important. I'm trying to gather my thoughts for that conversation and get up to it.
Yeah, no, it's and the thing is, it will suddenly be dead, and it'll be a new thing everyone's screaming about.
Right. And that's why I'm not going to chase all of them.
No.
And I'll do a show when when it feels evergreen, or we can really lay it. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oh man.
Yeah. We
Where
just
were
closed
we?
out that part of the conversation anyway. So
Yeah.
I was just about to start wrapping it up. I'm gonna head off and go and cook some dinner, but I can't let you off without asking you and having you answer the final question, and that is, if you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give that to and why?
I would give that to my middle brother. I would
Wow.
love for him to get Bitcoin at a level that was meaningful. Yeah, I think that would probably be the way I could maybe impact the world in the greatest way, I think. Someone close to me. Yeah. And then I would just go from there. Maybe my brother-in-law after that would be great. Sister-in-law, people close to me. That would be what I would do.
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. And yeah, the guy before you, he took a deep breath, thought about it 30 seconds, and yeah, for him it was his father. And I'm hearing a lot of these answers. You know, we've moved on from the early days of, oh, give it to Elon Musk, give it to the Pope, give it to the president, give it to the head of the Federal Reserve or whatever. Uh, like, no, fuck these people, really. Bring it
And I
back
think
to the
if we all just
family.
start with the people next to us,
One person at a
because
time.
someone's going to be next to them, and that will be their responsibility.
And
Um,
this is what I try and help people understand. And I put it on Twitter all a lot. Twitter a lot. It's like, especially when the price starts running, the number of people that join the network goes up every day. That is the number go up technology.
right.
That is what we are here for. So anything else is noise. I mean, it might be a bit of fun. We can dunk on the economists and whatever else and high five each other on Bitcoin Twitter. I'm down for it. I love it and I get involved in it too. But one person at a time. And if you're not having that conversation with your nearest and dearest, and you're not hosting a Bitcoin meetup or supporting one in any way, shape, or form, or finding your local plebs, a lot easier to do these days. Get into a conference, get in front of Bitcoiners. It's so huge because then you get the impetus, you get the not the conviction because you're already there. You get the courage, I suppose, to keep going because it can be a lonely place. So yeah, like orange pilling those around us is the best thing we can do for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I just love to see my loved ones and family and friends just get it. And I say that because it sounds arrogant, but I would love to them to see what I see. I say to them a lot, like, if this thing is 10% or 1% of what I think it is, like you owe it to yourself to look at it. And if I'm like completely wrong and I'm crazy,
Mhm.
just put in an hour and come back and tell me how so you could save me because I'm trying to save you. So maybe you owe to save me. And I don't, I try not to give out advice too often. It's the one thing I talk to friends and family about is Bitcoin, but it's hard. It's not easy.
Here's a little mind bender. When someone says to you, what if you're 100% wrong about this? You're like, what if I'm 99% wrong about this?
That's what I say. If I'm 1% right, like
Yeah.
where I think this is going, you owe it to yourself and your loved ones.
Mhm.
But it's amazing how people, it's just, it sounds again like a stock tip, and they don't want to sound like you. They're afraid. Like you could send someone some Bitcoin. Hey, here's $10. I want you to see what it's like. Now you've just completely devalued the thing you told them is the most valuable thing in the world.
Mhm.
Hey, this thing is so valuable. You got a bunch around it that you could just send to people for free. It sounds like reward points, and they want to find their own Bitcoin. They want to bet against you. It's really hard. It's really hard to convince people that you're actually coming from a place of love and not from a place of smarts or telling them what to do, or, because a lot of people, the way I interpret it, a lot of people are like, what kind of car should I buy? And they always tell you, yeah, the car they bought. They never like what are you looking for? Like whatever they have is perfect for you.
Exactly.
Wouldn't ask me a little bit about myself. Like, do we want the same things? No. What I have, you want. And the same with advice. Most times, like, what should I do with my life? You should be a lawyer. That's what I wanted to be. And they might not even know it. So it's hard for people to get like, I'm just doing this out of pure altruistic goodness reasons, and I believe in it. And slap me in the face if I'm wrong. Help me. But they're just like, if you're wrong, I'll let you be wrong, and I don't have the time to figure it out for myself. Like I don't even know if they don't care enough to be right or figure it out. I don't know. It's hard.
All right, Cedric, how can people come and listen to your podcast and reach out to you on Twitter?
Yeah, well, on Twitter at Ced Youngelman, CEDYOUNGELMAN, Bitcoin Matrix, everywhere you can download audio, and on YouTube, and Twitter _BITCOIN, Matrix, MATIRX. So,
all right,
this has been such an honor, Daniel. Really, it's been a pleasure. I've been looking up to what you've been doing for a long time, since the very first episode of mine. I've been looking to your show and to your Twitter account and following you, so it's been a real honor.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for carrying this message forward. Thanks for sharing a beer on the podcast. It's always nice to hang with Bitcoiners, and let's hope we get to meet again in real life. I won't be getting across to the States, I don't think, this year, so maybe 2025 will be the best time. And who knows?
You got it.
You might even be freed from your Fiat role and doing full-time Bitcoin. Fingers crossed.
We'll see. We'll get rid of those golden handcuffs soon.
Exactly.
All right.
See you, Cedric. Thanks, man.
Peace. Today's episode, with me as the guest interviewed by Daniel Prince, is brought to you by River, the preferred choice for buying Bitcoin. Hit me up with any feedback, since I'm not usually the one doing the talking. Love to hear what you guys think. You can support the Bitcoin Matrix podcast with a boost on the Fountain app and by writing a 5-star review wherever you listen to your pods. That would really help me get the word out and help new listeners find the show. And thank you for tuning in. Keep building, keep stacking, and always be laser focused out there. This is Cedric. Peace.